Books of the week. If it's a week, there are books. Ergo, books of the week. This is the algebra equation that has brought this show to you. And my name is Jeff Messerman. I am a librarian, if you can believe that, in Cedarburg, Wisconsin. And seated across from me virtually is not just any book critic, but a certain book critic, Steve Donahue in Boston. Hello.
Hello, everybody.
How are you today?
The only book critic that CPL Radio could get. We went straight to the bottom of the barrel, and there I was.
It's awesome. The first one we reached out to said yes. It's so nice. So, on this show, we were off last week because Steve granted me permission. He didn't to partake in some July 4th festivities locally here in town. I'm sure you are all recovering from the July 4th parade where fights broke out over who would put their chair where.
Yes, we missed last week. And from the correspondence I've been getting, that means we owe people an apology, which, of course, in CPL radio terms means you owe people an apology.
Yes, absolutely. And what's nice is that they don't accept.
You've dug up all these old Wisconsinites.
Dug up being the operative word here. Yes, indeed. Our wonderful, loving, adoring audience. On this show, we traditionally will take a little tour of the week in fine literature, and occasionally not so fine literature, with a nonfiction selection, a fiction selection, and a wild card. Today is a bit wild. We're going to do a full wild card type show today, but it's a little wilder than most because Steve and I, in our correspondence this week, said, let's just talk about what we're reading and call it a day. So that's kind of what we're doing. Now, when we say talk about what we're reading, for me, that just means normal amounts. For what you're reading is a very funny term when it comes to Steve.
Unfortunately, he's right. But should we explain to our viewers, though, I don't do anything else. I don't do anything else.
You know how many people are jealous, though, of that? When you say that, like 900 people go, how do you do that?
They're jealous of it, but I don't know how the two things live together. Yes, lots of people, when they hear that, are really jealous. They imagine what it would be like if they could do nothing but read, and think, oh, that'd be great. And then when I give them an idea of how much I read, they say, oh, you're a lying sack of crap. If you're going to imagine how nice it would be to do nothing but read, you should also imagine how much you would read if you did that. And they don't do that.
Yeah, it is a little bit of a breakdown there. But it can be done. Steve is a living, walking, breathing proof of that. And so I just defer to you right out of the gate here. What would you like to talk about off the top of your list?
Well, this is also a natural thing, right? I would imagine this kind of conversation happens a lot at the library. What are you reading?
It happens only every 8 minutes.
Well, it's a very natural kind of thing it's the reader thing that readers do when they get in touch with it.
It's a strange thing, though, with library patrons, and I've noticed back in my video store days with people who are renting movies, is they want to know. The big question was always, what's new that's good? That's kind of, and so the first two are easy. I can show you what's new. I can show you what's in. What's good, speaking of wild card, that's because as you, I'm sure, would agree, the next question out of our mouths would be, what are you? What do you like? What do you dislike? What do you hate? What do you enjoy? I mean, so it's not such a fast, they're looking for a magic bullet. And I don't think there is a magic bullet to that question, is there?
Well, there are a couple of quasi magic bullets, like the one that hit Governor Connolly. We can at least come that far. When people say that what's new, is one thing that's objective.
Yeah.
What's good? Well, after a book has been out for a few months, you can sort of, if you have your ear to the ground, you can sort of gauge what kind of a critical reaction it's getting.
Sure.
You certainly know whether it's starting to make inroads with the all-important book club crowd. And then there's the metric that I have become familiar with in the last 8 years, which is
the book club crowd, Steve.
Yes, oh my god. Oh my god. Those handbags don't kid around.
I've been hit by a few of them actually, which is interesting.
Well, considering the kind of videos that you rented to go to the store, I would think you have been, yes. What I'm amazed in is that the patrons dare to talk to each other.
You go through the swinging saloon doors. There's a little red light bulb on the wall.
Those things aren't good gauges of whether or not a book is good, but you can start to gauge whether or not a book has caught on.
Sure. Yes. Absolutely.
And that's a tough. It's a less quantifiable element, but it's so much what every writer hopes for.
Yeah.
They hope that their book will catch on. They hope that something will happen, because the truth is that in any given season in the American book market, tens of thousands of general interest, general readership books are flooded onto the market and sink without a stone.
Yeah.
Sink without a ripple, without any notice whatsoever of any kind.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Some authors manage to go their whole career being boring. So they accumulate a steady readership early on, and that's what keeps the mortgages paid.
I know I've been leaning into boring quite a bit myself the last couple of years, but that's just me.
And your ex-wives would say it's been longer than that.
They know what they were getting into. But no, it's interesting. And I think the prevalence of these national book club things now, the Good Morning America, the Read with Jenna, obviously Oprah was the first of that sort of thing, Reese Witherspoon. I wonder if that is working. It's funny, we did a new display this month. I have to switch out the displays at our library, and we decided I put all the past titles of those big juggernaut national book club things out for people. People went crazy immediately, and they were so grateful. Oh, thank you for this. I've been wanting something like this. So it's the psychology that is fascinating. And it has nothing to do with quality. Again, I don't think maybe half or more of those books in each one of those categories I mentioned probably may not have that quality, but it's interesting that people really need that kind of validation that, Reese Witherspoon said this is good, so therefore I'm going to give it a try.
Yes. It
has always been that way.
Reading is the most solitary and private hobby of them all, and people have always wanted to make it communal. That accounts for the widespread viewership of BookTube, for instance, the book-related section of YouTube. That accounts for the wild coke-snorting popularity of Book Talk. It's that people want it to be communal. They want to jump on a bandwagon.
Well, we don't have cocaine here, but we do have dancing hot dogs. So, look at those gams. Anyway, so with that, and it's funny you bring that the communal side of it too. We actually are starting at our library at the end of this month. I'm turning this into a gigantic CPL advertisement, which is great. We're starting something called a Silent Book Club. And this has been a wave that's been growing across the country, I guess, where people are desiring to commune in a single place, and traditionally with alcohol, I think, but not at our library because we don't have a license for that, but just to come together and read quietly. And it's interesting because people are like, well, what are the requirements? What do I have to do? Well, you have to be reading, or at least pretend to be reading, and you have to shut the hell up. These are the two things that are required for the Silent Book Club. And they come in for an hour and a half and they just do this together. And it's growing in popularity, and we're doing it this month.
Wouldn't it be more popular if it were a book club where everybody did the reading and then I talked at the top of my lungs for 40 minutes?
Yes. Of course, that would be enormous. I couldn't handle that level of success, Steve.
We'll start an online, zoomed in Cedarburg Public Library book club.
That would be fun, actually. I'm actually not against that.
And I will profit. And I will mercilessly mock anyone who offers opinions other than me.
Here's where we're going to run into some difficulties, I fear.
We can call it a day in the life of Jeff. Ever wondered what it would be like to be a CPL producer? You can find out.
No wonder his pores never close. Anyway, so with that preamble in mind, and that's what we're doing today. We're just kind of trading, tit for tat, or as I think I said in the email last night, Steve's going to show me his, and I'll show him mine. So what do you have this morning, Steve? It's off the top of your head, off the top of your pile.
Well, I finished the finished copy of this, Alexander at the End of the World by Rachel Kuster.
Okay.
This is about the last years of Alexander the Great's life, when he had achieved at least the nominal purpose that had animated all of his troops for the year and a half before that, which was to conquer the whole of the Persian Empire. The idea being, on the part of a lot of his lieutenants, on the part of most of his men, the idea being, okay, once we've done that, we'll commandeer their trade routes, we'll set up garrison cities, we'll all get rich, but most of us will go back home. Because that's the whole point of a military expedition, is that you do it, you achieve its goals, and then you go back home. And that was not in Alexander's mind at this time in his life. He wanted to keep going. He wanted to keep going into India, past the mountains, past the ocean, for the rest of the world. He wanted to keep going.
Well, let me ask, did he, does the book cover the fact, does he have a strategy in mind, or is it just a desire?
When you were Alexander, when doing what he did got him success after success after success with kingdoms that allegedly, at least on paper, were 10 times as big as his own, you dispense with the need for strategy. You stop thinking about it. Once you think you're invincible, you stop thinking about strategy.
Oh, boy.
Your strategy becomes, I'll just keep doing what I've done. Another case in point, much closer to home, would be Robert E. Lee.
Mm-hmm.
Once you feel that you're invincible, you stop thinking about that. So he didn't have a strategy, no. The one bedrock piece of, if not strategy, certainly material, is that he could count on the loyalty of his men. That was the one thing he was sure of, and it didn't work. It didn't. Well, actually, he counted on two things: that and living. He couldn't count on the loyalty. His men had families at home that they hadn't seen in years. They were expecting a campaign to end. Campaigns end. So this was pretty good. Of course, you're going to get this period in Alexander's life in any biography of Alexander,
sure,
but not in this much detail. And we have a lot of detail, especially when you consider that there's a lot of material that isn't quite historical in the sense that we would use that yardstick today. But it arises from the areas in the East where he was doing all this, and those sources tend to be ignored or downplayed by biographers. So I could wish that Rachel Kuster had a little bit more writing get up and go.
Yeah,
but it was very, very interesting, and I think this comes out this month. So I've got the publicity sheet.
Right.
Yes, this comes out July 16th. So just 2 days.
A couple days from now. Do you feel this is a accessible book for someone who's not maybe Okay.
Yeah, the key with a book like this is that the writer is going to have to break down two things: the military world of Alexander's army, since that's his whole world. He's not living a civic life.
Yeah,
and also everything that's gone before that would lead him to think that he could just keep doing this. And she does a good job of that.
Good. Excellent. No, it's I have a lot of people who like to come in and say, well, I really want to start dipping a toe into more historical nonfiction, and I don't always have a good answer for that. What would be a good gateway drug, a good entry point for someone who's never so I don't know if that book
does the library keep a set of Will Durant?
I don't think so. I don't know. I don't think so. No. Sounds like we should.
Will and Ariel Durant wrote, for you readers, I'm sure that Jeff knows this, but Will and Ariel Durant wrote more than half a century ago. They wrote a multi-volume history of the world.
Yeah.
History of civilization. And you can find it at yard sales. You see it at garage shelf all the time. And those volumes
I think we do. I think we do have that, actually.
Good. Oh,
yeah.
If you want, if you're just a general reader and you've always been thinking, I'd like to read more nonfiction, I'd like to read more about things that actually happen,
Yeah.
but it's so big and it's so intimidating and it's so dry, a lot of it.
Right.
Find those volumes. Find the time period that interests you, and then find the volume that covers that time period, and just read that to start with.
Okay. Nice. That's $1 million tip. I did not expect that today on the show. So there we go.
Nothing like those volumes. There's nothing like that that's come out since. There never will be. Will and Ariel Durant's volumes are firmly grounded in actual reality, things that actually happen that don't have any kind of political agenda. And they're great reading. They're great reading. So.
Well, that's what's great about the show is you get these not just literary tips, but that's kind of a life tip. And I would like to actually add one too, because again, today's show is tit for tat, and I want to make sure that I respond to Steve's hint. This is mine. You guys have to try Cocoa Puffs Loaded. I had this earlier this week. It was so good. These are so wrong. This cereal should be banned. That's how good it was. So anyway, I just want to make sure that so you've got the Durant books and you've got Cocoa Puffs Loaded. So there we go.
And in order to consume that cereal, which is entirely made of plastic,
yes,
you have to drench it in the mammary secretions of a cow. Is that right?
Or a nut. You could do a soy or or a bean. You could do not your dog, but you could. There are options. There are options nowadays. Let me talk a little bit about a book I am just about done with because I read at a much different pace than Steve. This is something called, and our readers in Cedarburg will know this pretty well, The Museum of Lost Quilts by Jennifer Chiaverini. Let's pronounce that right because a lot of people come in and don't. And she lives in Madison, which I don't know if you knew that, Steve. She is a Madison resident. And yeah. And this is part of her Elm Creek Quilts series, which is, I have no affinity or knowledge or even desire to know anything about quilts. Hence why I'm reading this book. But no, it's, she came, as the locals know, she was here back in May 1st and did a talk in our community room. It was very well received. Our town is top loaded with people who have passion for quilts and quilting. We actually have a quilting museum here in town, and this is a passion. I don't know if you run into, we've talked about birders on our show before, Steve. These are quilters, and I'm not sure who's more devout.
Well, that's a very euphemistic word you use there. When it comes to devout, I don't know. But when it comes to downright scary, the crafting crowd takes it in a heartbeat. They take it on a walk. Birders are good with binoculars. Crafters are good with gigantic needles.
Right. They do handle quite a few instruments that people like Norman Bates and Freddy Krueger, all those fine people. Yes.
And also, birders can't do their obsession all the time. You can't bird if you are waiting at the dentist. You can't bird if you're actually in the dentist chair.
No.
And I have seen crafters do their job in both.
Yes.
Don't stop. Even when the dentist is working on you, you're still making a tea cozy or something.
Mid root canal. It's amazing.
I've also watched them on the subway, on a crowded subway, and you can't tell me there isn't rage in the tightly controlled hand movements. I see rage there.
Well, these are nice ladies, Steve.
I'm just giving the crafting crowd their proper respect. That's all.
Yes. I don't think any of them would dispute, by the way, anything you said. In fact, they're like, oh, he didn't go far enough. So the Museum of Lost Quilts, for that, this has got to be, I would think, like book 20 or 30 in this very long series. She also writes historical fiction as well, Jennifer Chiaverini. And what I'm enjoying about this book, to cut to the chase here, is that not that there's so much of a chase in this book, but is that it is fascinating and beautifully written. And Jennifer Chiaverini, her prose, she's clearly someone who's been at it for a long time. Her prose is so clear and so direct. And that's rare sometimes in modern fiction. It's just she tells you the story and divulges her characters in a very traditional way. And this is really refreshing. I'm enjoying every minute of it. So There
and
it
you are
is.
the target demographic, I would imagine.
Not even close. Not even by the fact that this is sitting next to a like a book called The Lost Jedi would probably tell everyone everything they need to know. But I am. It's shocking to me and a little alarming. And this may be because I'm 53 now, but I'm enjoying this far more than I ever would have allowed myself to at any other time in my life.
Have you read any of the other books?
Nope. And you don't even
No.
need to. It's beautiful about this is actually you can just jump right in. I know there's a history here. These characters, and you read about them, there's clearly a very rich, crafted over 20 or 30 books. She has woven. I'm almost done with these puns. These characters, you feel the history, but it doesn't handcuff you to enjoying the story. But that's skill. I'm sorry if you're an author and you can write book 30, and a schmuck like me can jump right in and know exactly where I'm at. That's great. I mean, this is kind of a rave review. Yikes.
We have charbroiled authors on this channel who don't manage to do that.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. So that's the Museum of Lost Quilts. We have numerous copies in our library. And if you don't, here's the thing. If you don't, he got me started on quilting. I love it. If you don't think a book about quilters and quilting would ever work for you, I have a feeling you could give this a try. You should give this a try because you'll come away actually maybe even having a little more respect for the art for quilting. Because I as I read this, I'm like, oh, I did not know that so much personal history goes into a quilt. So much American history goes into it. So much.
One other of my questions. So because you don't quilt. You don't.
Not even a gun point, Steve.
you do donuts, not quilting.
I do. Yes.
and I've never appreciated until I did CPL Radio's Books of the Week how much personal history goes into donuts.
I'm wearing all of it, Steve.
Yeah.
So yes, and yeah, I'm shocked. I love it, and I picked it up almost ironically, thinking, "Oh, I'll give this a try." And 30 pages in, I'm like, "Well, not only am I going to give this a try, I'm going to finish this thing. This is wonderful." So there we go.
Well, my next pick was from a little free library.
Oh, nice.
Which doesn't make any sense at all.
Not at all. What are you doing? Look behind you.
Viewers who don't maybe tuning in for the first time, I'm a book reviewer. I'm a book critic. I'm a book section editor. I'm a book columnist. I get books in the mail. I don't need to be taking books out of a little free library. I absolutely don't need to be doing that. But I can't resist any more than the rest of you could resist. And I found a book at a little free library by A.G. Riddle called Winter World. Where the main characters are on the International Space Station racing against time to solve the riddle of why the world's ice caps and glaciers are rapidly encroaching southward. Whether they're killing off the Great Lakes, they're crowding people out of eastern habited cities and whatnot. And these scientists, these environmental scientists, need to figure out why.
We are back. We had a little internet hiccup. If you see a little blip there, it wasn't me running to get donuts. Steve indicated it actually, but Steve was presenting a book that he had essentially stolen from a little free library.
Stole a book from a little free library. This thing, A.G. Riddle's book Winter World, where a crew of scientists in the International Space Station have to figure out why the world is suddenly deep freezing. The glaciers are encroaching from the poles at a record pace. People are having to migrate in huge numbers. And I confess, probably the reason I grabbed this from the little free library was because it was 130 degrees.
It's all wishful thinking. It's a wish book for you.
Today, this week, finally, the story of Earth's catastrophic climate change that I have been worried about for a couple of years has now broken through to Chip and Bambi on the Sunday news show.
Yeah.
Because there are parts of the United States that have been almost uninhabitable for almost 2 weeks. There are parts of the Middle East that are literally uninhabitable.
Yeah.
your body will not work in humid temperatures of 130 degrees. It will
Absolutely.
start to fail unless you're in air conditioning. But if you're outside, you will start to die.
Right. I
I mean,
yeah.
even walking 2 blocks to the grocery store, you will start to die
Yeah.
in temperatures like that. Your body will start to break down.
You
And
don't
we're
open a
now
grocery store on the planet Mercury. You just don't do it.
we're recording those temperatures now on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And this is the week that did it, I think. I think this is the week that did it. This is the week where you're in severe medical danger if you stay outside in Las Vegas for more than 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And Las Vegas, Las Vegas isn't Lahore. Las Vegas
Right.
will get the attention of people.
Certainly.
So maybe that's why I grabbed this. It tells the story of a freezing world. It does so in utterly brainless prose.
Perfect.
So take a dumb author and then take a hot knitting needle and pierce it right here, straight through until the point comes out the other side. And then when you're done with that, you withdraw it. It's hot. The needle is hot enough to cauterize the wound. The person you've done it to has gone from this to this.
Yes.
Then tell that person to write a book. That's what this is.
Oh dear.
And the solution at the end of the book.
Yes, I'd like to hear that.
Anyway, I won't.
Oh. All right.
Solution at the end of the book.
So,
any of you who are familiar with Stephen King's book Under the Dome will know what the solution to this book is.
oh no, I am.
I won't spoil anything, but it's not epic climate change. It's not anything that we have to buckle down and fix. And it should be, because it is, and we do.
Yeah.
It is, and we do.
Do you know how old is that book? Just like the last 5 years, or are we talking? I'm just curious.
Well, the broader answer to your question is that it came out late enough for the author to know better.
That was what I was. You caught me. That's what I was hinting at.
2019. 2019.
We knew.
When I think it was in 2018 when someone in Phoenix literally did fry an egg on the sidewalk.
Yes, absolutely. A banner moment for everybody. Oh God.
So late enough to know better.
Yeah.
It's a grossly irresponsible. Well, I shouldn't say grossly irresponsible. The grossly irresponsible thing would be if anyone read it, because it reads like a chimpanzee wrote it, and not even a fully grown chimpanzee, an adolescent chimpanzee who thinks it's cool to impress by being edgy. An adolescent chimpanzee who uses a skateboard.
Did you feel edgy when you read it, Steve? Did you feel kind of edgy?
Throwing it across the room. It was at moments like this when I read books like this that I really miss. Once upon a time, you readers that don't follow every little bit of minutia of CPL radio. Once upon a time, I had a gigantic, fat, stupid basset hound, and she was wonderful for this sort of thing, because when you throw a book across the room, you really want to throw it at someone. In your mind, you want to throw it at the author, but the author's never there. And I had the wonderful psychic relief of hurling horrible books at my fat, gassy basset hound. They would just lodge in the folds of her fat. Never even felt the impact. Every once in a while, she would hear the impact, and her enormous head would come up. Like, what was that?
So your basset hound was kind of a walking little free library in some ways, is what I'm hearing. That's kind of wonderful.
Whereas if I threw a book at my little schnauzer, not only would she dodge it from a sound sleep, but she would fire me. So I don't get the chance to do that.
She would end you, yes. Well, it's an interesting choice, and I'm strangely comforted by the fact that a renowned book critic is trolling the waters of this little free library.
I'm not. I promise I'm not. I promise I'm not. I go to my used bookstore when it's not 130 degrees. I go to my used bookstore, but otherwise I wait for the books to come to me.
Right, exactly. Yes.
My producer can tell you that my reaction when somebody says, "Well, here's a new book, why don't you pay for it?" is sheer horror.
How do you offend a book critic? You say what Steve just said.
Right. Yeah. How do you offend a book critic? He takes a pile of new releases to the cash register at Barnes & Noble, and the cash register person says, that'll be $65. That's how you offend a book critic. I always remember when I think about paying money for new books, I always think about Peter O'Toole in the movie My Favorite Year.
Sure.
In absolute horror, he says, "I'm not an actor, I'm a movie star."
Absolutely.
I always think about that.
Wonderful movie. I'm glad. Well, see, once again, you've been at this long enough that you kicked me a segue.
Is that wonderful movie Us? I just realized. Are you the poor producer in that movie? You are. You're a monstrous ego trip of an actor.
I have to take you to my mother's for dinner to meet her Polynesian new husband.
Oh no! So at some point in this show, I'm going to tell you that women are unwell, men vomit.
Or worse.
Well, those of you who want to know what it's like behind the scenes at Peterburg Highway, just rent My Favorite Year.
Find My Favorite Year. I
didn't realize that.
I am Benji Stone, although actually I'm Benji Steinberg because that was my name prior. This is too creepy. Well, before Steve gets out his sword and says, "I'm Porthos," speaking of movies, a wonderful segue here. Our library just got this in. It's called The Path to Paradise, and it is a Francis Ford Coppola. It says it's a Francis Ford Coppola story, and I found that kind of interesting. Coppola's an interesting guy, I guess. He's having getting a little time in the press right now because he apparently made an utterly insufferable dream project movie called Megalopolis, which is certainly fun to say, but might not be fun to watch from what I'm hearing out of Cannes. But nonetheless, this book is very good and very well written. Steve, from hanging out with Steve on these mornings like I do, he has made me immediately suspicious of any sort of... So I am fearful that this might all be, for lack of a better word, bullshit.
You have one huge mitigating factor against that, and that's the author. Sam Watson's great. He's great.
I was engaged throughout. I like the way he did this was really interesting. I've never read a biography because he's not out to tell a story of the man. Right. He takes these snippets, and when you're in them, you're like, well, how does this all come together? And then by the end, you're like, oh, I see what so he's really quite a little craftsman, little sorcerer with how he's doing. Have
you ever read him before?
No.
Does the library have any of his books?
I would think so. Yeah. Actually, I think there's something called The Big Goodbye. I'm almost positive we have that on our shelves. So I'll have to hunt that out.
He's amazing.
Coppola's an interesting guy because the man is clearly, like every Hollywood anybody, is this, narcissistic gas bag. but through that, he's done some really interesting stuff. And most people know him because of The Godfather. And that's fine. One should know him because of The Godfather, because he took a really trashy book and made something interesting out of it. But people cannot lose sight of the fact, and our author very covertly gets in the fact that this man is a glaring, explosive failure across the board. Everything, it's all a disaster. And yet he fails with such elan, such verve, that you can't not be fascinated. So I love it.
In a way, his movies fail in a way that make you think maybe you're the one who's not getting something.
It's my fault.
I have to point out, I haven't read this book. I'm late getting to it because Sam Watson is a must-read author. I haven't read this book, but I did watch a screener of Megalopolis, and it is brilliant.
Really? Oh, interesting.
It is very, very strange, but it is brilliant.
Oh, I'm excited now because you have to say, if you're a fan of cinema and you're a fan of movies, you have to love a director who chases their folly. that is like exciting, even if pass or fail, that's exciting. And so I had every intention of seeing it, and hearing you say that is that's cool. I like that.
There were things about it that reminded me of something that you're going to know that I'm not. My mind is blanking on the specifics. What was there was a movie that adapted a Don DeLillo book.
Oh yes, he did
the guy from Twilight. It starred Robert Pattinson, and he did a really good job. I really liked it.
Yes,
I can't remember the name of it for the life of me. Megalopolis reminded me a lot of that.
Cosmopolis.
Cosmopolis. That's right.
Yeah. I remember that was I enjoyed that movie actually.
Yeah, it is. It's really Cosmopolis is really, really good.
Really
This is a weird thing because it's against type for me in both cases because I don't particularly like Don DeLillo.
Yeah.
And I have maintained forever that directors don't matter. And yet I like that one.
Oh, he would like to have a word with you, sir.
Actually, when I go on my long screed, you all can catch me. We'll sell tickets when I do the Cedarburg Public Library public address.
Yes,
we can sell tickets, and I can take questions from the irate film bros in the audience. But when I make my case for why directors don't matter, the number one example I have in mind is Coppola. So it's not a coincidence that it's on my mind, but.
It is interesting, yes. I mean, and I would agree that actually directors are interesting because without the guy with the roll of electrical tape and the lady who holds the light and the guy who schleps the thing, what are these people? Right. Just they're corporate shills. They're CEOs. They're just, I mean, so I don't know, but it tracks. But I absolutely enjoyed this. It read fast. If you're looking for a quick read, a quick biography, and it really gets into his film studio called Zoetrope quite a bit and what his dreams and goals for them were, which were very noble and pure and utterly impossible to achieve. It just could not happen. And I fear that still today, this day, as we speak, at this moment, he's like, I got a new idea for Zoetrope. It's going to work. This is big. Like, Francis, don't take a nap. So there we are. But anyway, so there we are. Well, I had extra books, but I see our time is fleeting and there are, I was going to say there are other shows on CPR Radio, but there aren't.
Oh, yeah. There certainly are. Yeah.
Oh, no.
There are lots of them. They're all well produced.
You don't think this is a good sunroom with the spider webs and the ants in the corner?
I echo here the sentiments of your own God. You are mine. M-I-N-E, mine.
Monotheism is really something.
It was my first commandment. Thou shalt have no guest but me.
Oh boy. So here we are. At the sound of the cannon, we will fade to black for another week of Books of the Week. Let me remind you that we have something called Patreon. It's out there. It's floating around. And if you have some spare change in your pocket, specifically, I think the levels are set at $3.14 or $10.16, some very illogical value.
Gave our layers Wisconsin prices.
Yes. Up there at Harlow's Food Market, you can get a good rack of ribs for that too.
Ribs, or you can be a patron of our show.
This is the choice you have before you, lovely patrons. But feel free to stop by. I'll put the description. Wait a minute. I think I can do that. I have a button for that. Is that the button? That's the button. Patreon.com/Books of the Week. And we would love to have you over there. We have every intention of making some Patreon and only videos. Lord knows we'll get to it, but I sure want to because I have some, and Steve has some wonderful ideas, and I think it'll be exciting and fun and cool. And
it's just a question of timing. One of us is really busy.
Well, yes. I have to go cut the lawn. So anyway, it's been a wonderful show.
You probably have to go produce somebody else cutting.
No. Well, I'm going to bring Steve down from his tree now, and we will have a wonderful day. Thank you, Steve, for bringing your expertise, and thank you, patrons and viewers, and we will see you next week for more new books, I would think. Take care. Bye, everybody. Stay tuned.